Nothing for Christmas dinner for the identical Chinese twins, until Rancher brought joy and showed love. People often said that if one of the twins smiled, the other would follow without even thinking. They shared everything, from school books to their tiny meals and even their dreams. But this Christmas, their bond and their resilience were about to be tested in a way they had never faced before. The village where they lived was small, surrounded by rolling hills and rice fields that stretched as far as the eyes could see. It was a place where everyone knew each other, where doors were rarely locked, and where neighbors helped each other during harvests or festivals. Life was simple but often hard, especially for families like the twins, who struggled to get by each day. Their father had been working in a construction site, trying to earn enough money to feed the family, when he had an accident that left him unable to work for several months. Their mother, a gentle but hardworking woman, took on long hours in the fields, planting, watering, and harvesting crops from dawn until dusk, just to make sure there was something to eat. But no matter how hard she worked, sometimes there simply wasn't enough. As December approached, the excitement of the holiday season began to spread through the village. Other children talked about Christmas decorations, festive meals, and the small gifts they might receive. Li Mei and Li Hua tried to join the excitement, but a heavy feeling sat on their chests. They knew that this year, there would be nothing special for Christmas. There would be no roasted chicken, no fruits, no treats, and certainly no gifts to unwrap with wide eyes. The twins whispered their worries to each other at night, their voices trembling as they tried to keep their disappointment hidden from their parents. "We won't have Christmas like the others," Li Hua said quietly one night, her small hands clutching the thin blanket they shared. "Maybe we should just pretend it's another day," Li Mei replied softly, trying to cheer herself as much as her sister, but deep inside, both girls felt a hollow emptiness. They remembered last year when they had barely managed to have a small rice and vegetable dish, and it had left them longing for something more, a warm meal, a little sweetness, and the joy they saw in other children's eyes. Despite their worries, the twins tried to make the best of it. They scoured the house for scraps of colored paper and began cutting small shapes to hang on the walls and windows. Stars, hearts, and even little animals dotted the room, bringing a small sense of cheer. They laughed quietly together as they worked, their voices echoing softly against the bare walls. Li Mei carefully folded the paper into tiny envelopes, imagining that they contained little messages of hope, while Li Hua drew pictures of their dream Christmas dinner, roasted chicken, steaming rice, fruits, and a small cake in the middle of the table. These simple acts gave them a fleeting sense of happiness, even though they both knew it was only pretend. Each day, the twins watched as other children in the village prepared for Christmas. They saw neighbors buying small gifts, families hanging decorations, and children helping their parents bake sweet treats. Every sight made their hearts ache a little more, yet the twins never complained. Instead, they found small ways to create joy in their own lives. They sang songs together in their little home, pretending to be performers on a stage, their voices bright and clear despite the cold that crept in through the thin walls. They told each other stories of magical Christmases, where joy appeared even in the poorest homes. Their mother noticed their quiet efforts and felt a mixture of pride and sorrow. She admired how resilient her daughters were, how they could still find happiness in small things, but her heart ached knowing that this Christmas would bring them little more than rice and vegetables. She had hoped to surprise them with something special, but there simply wasn't enough money to make it happen. At night she would sit by the small fire, thinking of ways to give her children a memory they would cherish, but the options were limited, and the cold reality of poverty weighed heavily on her. The village itself, while poor, had a strong sense of community. Neighbors often shared what little they had, and there were always small acts of kindness hidden in everyday life. Sometimes, a neighbor would leave a basket of vegetables at someone's door, or share a piece of fruit with a child who looked hungry. These acts were quiet, unnoticed by most, but they made life bearable for those who received them. The twins had seen this before and quietly hoped that maybe, just maybe, some kindness might find its way to them this year. As Christmas Eve approached, the twins could barely contain their feelings. They walked through the village, looking at the preparations around them, imagining what it would be like to have a proper celebration. Their hands brushed together as they walked, a silent comfort for each other. Li Mei whispered, "Even if we don't have anything, we have each other, and that's something." Li Hua nodded, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. They returned home, their spirits heavy but still carrying a tiny flame of hope that perhaps this year would bring a miracle. The evening air was cold, and the small home felt emptier than ever. The twins gathered around a small wooden table, their plates empty, imagining the meal they wished they could have. They held hands across the table, creating a silent promise to face the night together, no matter how bleak it seemed. Outside, the village celebrated in small ways, lamps lit in windows, laughter echoing softly through the streets. But inside the twins' home, a quiet stillness remained. It was a night of waiting, of longing, of small hopes clinging stubbornly to life despite the harshness of reality. As they lay down to sleep that night, Li Mei and Li Hua whispered to each other, sharing dreams of a Christmas filled with warmth and joy. They imagined a table full of food, laughter ringing through their home, and the feeling of love that went beyond gifts or decorations. Even in the face of hunger and poverty, the twins' hearts were filled with a deep sense of wonder. They believed, perhaps with a child's simple wisdom, that kindness could appear even when it seemed impossible, and that sometimes hope was all you needed to carry you through the darkest nights. Little did they know that hope would soon take a very real form. A gesture of kindness, unexpected and gentle, was quietly making its way toward their small home, ready to change their Christmas in ways they could never have imagined. The twins' quiet resilience, their shared love, and their dreams of joy would soon meet the warmth of a stranger's heart, proving that even in the hardest times, life had a way of surprising those who dared to hope. And so, on that quiet Christmas Eve, Li Mei and Li Hua slept holding hands, hearts full of longing and quiet expectation. They did not know how their night would change, nor how a single act of generosity could bring them joy beyond their wildest dreams. But in that simple, shared moment, they carried the true spirit of Christmas, a spirit not born of gifts or grandeur, but of hope, love, and the unwavering bond between two sisters who faced the world together. The next morning, Li Mei and Li Hua woke to the same cold light filtering through the small windows of their home. They dressed quickly in the thin clothes they had, shivering slightly as the chill ran through the house. Their mother had already left for the fields, carrying a small basket of vegetables to sell at the market. Their father sat quietly by the fire, nursing his injured leg and watching the girls with a gentle but tired expression. There was no sign of the joy that Christmas usually brought. The twins exchanged glances and tried to put on cheerful faces for their father, but the weight of hunger and the knowledge of another empty day pressed heavily on their small shoulders. The twins decided to step outside for a little walk to clear their minds. They wandered down the narrow dirt path that led through their village, noticing the faint traces of snow on the rooftops and the smoke curling from chimneys. Children from nearby homes ran past them, laughing as they carried small bundles of food or simple gifts, and the sight made Li Mei and Li Hua hold hands tightly, their hearts aching with longing. They did not speak, for words would have made the emptiness of their situation too loud, but they walked together, silently sharing their sorrow and their hope. As they approached the center of the village, they noticed a man walking slowly along the path. He was tall and strong, dressed in a warm coat and carried two large baskets. The twins paused, curious. The man moved carefully, as though the weight of the baskets was heavy, yet there was a gentle expression on his face. He smiled at the twins when their eyes met his, and the warmth in that smile made their hearts flutter with a strange sense of hope. They stepped aside, allowing him to pass, but he stopped and called out softly, "Are these your children?" Li Mei and Li Hua could hardly believe their ears. They looked at each other in disbelief, their mouths slightly open. Could it be true? Could someone really care enough to come all this way just for them? Mr. Chen entered their home carefully, setting down the baskets on the wooden table. One basket was filled with fresh vegetables, rice, and fruits, while the other contained small gifts, a set of colored pencils, a notebook, and a small handmade doll for each twin. The twins' eyes widened as they looked at the food. The aroma of fresh vegetables and bread, mingling with the sweetness of the fruits, filled the room and made their stomachs growl softly. Their father's eyes glistened as he watched the twins' reaction, his heart swelling with gratitude. The twins could hardly contain their excitement. Li Mei picked up the colored pencils, feeling the smooth texture and imagining the drawings she could make, while Li Hua hugged her doll tightly, feeling a warmth in her chest she had not felt for a long time. They looked at Mr. Chen with wide, shining eyes. "You came for us?" Li Hua asked, her voice barely a whisper. Mr. Chen nodded, smiling gently. "I wanted to make sure you had a happy Christmas. I know it has been hard this year and no one should feel alone on a day like this." Chen accepted, and as he sipped, he began to talk to the family in a calm, friendly manner. He asked about the twins' school, about their favorite things to do, and about their dreams for the future. Li Mei and Li Hua began to open up, telling him about the songs they loved to sing, the stories they liked to read, and the little games they played together. Mr. Chen listened attentively, nodding and laughing softly at their stories, making the twins feel as if they were the most important people in the world. As the conversation continued, Mr. Chen helped their mother prepare the small Christmas meal. He chopped vegetables, stirred rice in a pot, and even helped roast the small chicken they had managed to get from a neighbor. The twins watched in awe, their eyes wide as the kitchen filled with the smells of a proper Christmas dinner. It was the first time in many months that they felt a sense of joy so deep it made their hearts ache with happiness. Their mother worked alongside Mr. Chen, her hands moving quickly, yet she could not stop smiling at the way he treated her children with such care and respect. Once the food was ready, the family gathered around the small table. Li Mei and Li Hua could hardly believe what they saw: steaming bowls of rice, roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, and a few fruits arranged neatly in a small dish. The twins held hands across the table, feeling a sense of wonder and gratitude that words could not describe. Mr. Chen smiled at their reaction and encouraged them to eat slowly, savoring every bite. For the first time in months, the twins felt full, warm, and safe, as if the weight of the past year had lifted, even if only for a few hours. After the meal, Mr. Chen gave the twins their small gifts. Li Mei carefully opened the colored pencils, arranging them in order by color, while Li Hua hugged her doll and whispered thank you softly. The twins' eyes sparkled as they looked at the gifts, realizing that they were not just toys or tools, but symbols of someone's love and care. They felt seen, valued, and cherished in a way they had not experienced before. Mr. Chen's small act of generosity had created a memory that would last a lifetime. The afternoon passed in laughter and storytelling. Mr. Chen shared stories from his life on the ranch, talking about the animals he cared for, the long days of work, and the joy he found in helping others. The twins listened eagerly, asking questions and imagining what it would be like to live on a ranch, to see animals every day, and to feel the open air on their faces. Their mother joined in, laughing at the twins, curiosity and marveling at the way Mr. Chen had brought life and happiness into their home. As evening approached, the family stepped outside for a moment to enjoy the crisp winter air. The twins held Mr. Chen's hands as they walked, feeling a deep sense of connection and gratitude. The rancher spoke softly, telling them that kindness and love were the true gifts of life, more valuable than anything money could buy. He encouraged the twins to dream big, to be kind to others, and to remember that even the smallest act of generosity could make a world of difference. By the time Mr. Chen left, the twins were already planning how they could help others in their village, inspired by his example. They promised each other that they would carry the memory of this Christmas in their hearts forever, and that they would never forget the lesson of love and kindness that had arrived in their home that day. Their hearts were full, their spirits lifted, and even the cold winter evening could not dampen the warmth that had settled inside them. Li Mei and Li Hua went to bed that night holding their new dolls and colored pencils, their minds full of happy thoughts and gentle dreams. They imagined the farm that Mr. Chen had described, the laughter of children playing together, and the joy of sharing with others. For the first time in a long while they felt hope, pure, simple hope, that no matter how hard life became, kindness would always find a way to shine through. Outside, the village continued its quiet celebrations, but inside the twins' home, a miracle had quietly unfolded. It was not grand or expensive, but it was perfect in its simplicity. The love and care of a stranger had turned a cold, empty Christmas into a day filled with warmth, laughter, and gratitude. Li Mei and Li Hua knew that this Christmas was different, not because of the food or gifts, but because someone had shown them that they mattered, that they were loved, and that joy could appear even when hope seemed impossible. And so, as the twins drifted off to sleep that night, their hearts were filled with a gentle joy that could not be measured by material things. They dreamed of a future where they, too, could share kindness with others, where every small act of love could grow into something beautiful. The rancher's visit had not only given them a meal and a few gifts, it had given them a memory of true generosity, a lesson in compassion, and a reminder that love has the power to transform even the hardest moments into something unforgettable. The evening air was filled with a calm, quiet joy that seemed to wrap itself around the small house. Li Mei and Li Hua had never felt so happy, so safe, or so full of hope. The meal that Mr. Chen had helped prepare sat steaming on the small wooden table, a feast in their eyes, though simple by any other standard. The twins could hardly believe that such a meal was possible in their little home. The aroma of roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, and warm rice filled every corner of the house, mingling with the scent of their mother's sweet, herbal tea. Every detail seemed magical, every sound of laughter and clinking bowls a melody they would remember for years. The twins' mother moved carefully, placing the food onto each plate with a quiet grace. Her eyes shone with gratitude and a soft, emotional relief. For a long time, she had worried that her children would go through another Christmas feeling lonely, hungry, and forgotten. But now, with Mr. Chen's arrival, everything seemed different. She looked at her daughters and saw their wide eyes, their small hands reaching for the plates, and she felt her heart fill with a happiness she had almost thought impossible. Li Mei picked up her chopsticks, staring at the food as if it were the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. She laughed softly at her own amazement, while Li Hua's small fingers trembled slightly as she took her first bite of the steaming rice. The flavors, simple yet rich, made their hearts sing. The twins shared glances, and in that silent exchange, a world of gratitude, love, and unspoken words passed between them. They had waited for this moment, and now it was here, real and tangible, filling not only their stomachs but also their spirits. Mr. Chen smiled at their reaction, his eyes warm and kind. "Eat slowly," he said softly. "Enjoy every bite. A meal is not just for the body, it is also for the heart." The twins nodded eagerly, savoring each mouthful, feeling a connection not only to the food but also to the care and love that had gone into bringing it to them. Their laughter, soft but bright, began to fill the room, and soon the atmosphere was light and joyful, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the warmth of kindness. After they had eaten, Mr. Chen encouraged the twins to open their small gifts. Li Mei carefully unwrapped the colored pencils, laying them out in neat rows by color. Each pencil seemed to hold endless possibilities for imagination, for drawing the dreams she had held in her heart for so long. Li Hua unwrapped her doll, hugging it tightly, feeling a comfort she had not known in months. The dolls were simple, handmade with soft cloth and thread, yet they represented something far more important: love, thoughtfulness, and care from someone who had never met them before. The twins spent time showing Mr. Chen what they could do with their gifts. Li Mei began drawing small pictures of their home, the village, and even the feast that now sat happily in their memory. Li Hua created tiny stories about the doll she had received, imagining adventures in which the doll and the twins went on journeys of kindness and discovery. Mr. Chen listened with gentle encouragement, praising their creativity and imagination. The twins beamed at his words, realizing that someone truly believed in them, that their small efforts and dreams mattered. As the evening grew darker, the family and Mr. Chen gathered near the small fire in the corner of the room. The flickering flames cast soft shadows, making the moment feel even more intimate. Mr. Chen shared stories from his ranch, tales of animals he cared for, the seasons changing over the hills, and the simple beauty of life when one takes the time to notice it. The twins listened with wide eyes, captivated by the idea of wide-open spaces, green fields, and animals they had only seen in books or small visits to neighboring farms. They asked questions eagerly, their curiosity boundless, and Mr. Chen answered each one with patience and warmth. The twins' parents joined in, adding their own stories from when they were children, talking about old Christmases and the little joys they had experienced despite hardships. For a moment, the small home felt larger than life, filled with laughter, storytelling, and the glow of togetherness. The twins realized that the joy of Christmas was not in the wealth of the meal or the size of the gifts, but in the shared moments, the warmth of connection, and the feeling of being loved and remembered. Mr. Chen then suggested a small game. He asked the twins to tell him their favorite Christmas memories, even if they were tiny or imaginary. Li Mei spoke first, telling a story of how she had once made a tiny paper star to hang on the wall and how it had made her feel proud. Li Hua spoke of a dream she had, where she and her sister had a table full of food and were surrounded by laughter and love. The twins' parents listened, smiling at their children's innocence and the purity of their hearts. Mr. Chen clapped gently after each story, telling the twins how special their memories and dreams were, and encouraging them to always hold on to them. After a while, the twins began to imagine ways to share their joy with others. They decided to give a portion of their meal to neighbors who had little, to offer their small gifts to friends who might need a smile, and to spread the warmth they felt that evening. Mr. Chen praised this idea, explaining that the true meaning of Christmas was in giving, in helping, and in creating happiness for others. The twins' hearts swelled with the thought of sharing, understanding for the first time that happiness grows when it is shared. The evening continued with songs. Li Mei and Li Hua began to sing softly, their voices blending in harmony. Mr. Chen joined in with a gentle humming, while their parents clapped and sang along. The songs, though simple, carried deep meaning. Every note was a celebration of life, hope, and kindness. The twins laughed, their voices bright and free, filling the room with a warmth that seemed to push away all worries. For that moment, nothing else existed but love, togetherness, and the simple joy of being alive. As night fell, Mr. Chen helped the twins place their gifts safely in their small room. He reminded them that these gifts were tokens of love, but the most important gift of all was the kindness and care that had brought them here. The twins hugged him tightly, feeling a bond that went beyond words, a connection that would remain in their hearts forever. Their parents joined the hug, tears of gratitude shining in their eyes. In that small home, a simple act of generosity had created a moment of profound beauty and connection. Before leaving, Mr. Chen knelt to speak quietly with the twins. "Remember this feeling," he said softly. "Remember that someone cared enough to come to your home, to share a meal, and to bring joy. One day, you will have the chance to do the same for others. That is the real magic of Christmas." Li Mei and Li Hua nodded solemnly, their small hands clutching his warmly. They promised themselves that they would never forget this day, that they would carry its lessons in their hearts, and that they would pass on the kindness they had received. When the door finally closed behind Mr. Chen, a hush fell over the home. The twins, still buzzing with excitement, ran to the windows to look at the village lights, imagining the stories of other children, other families, and other acts of quiet generosity that might be happening that night. They felt connected not only to their family but also to the wider world, understanding for the first time that love and care could travel in unexpected ways, touching lives and changing them forever. Li Mei and Li Hua went to bed that night feeling a deep, unshakable happiness. They held their dolls, touched their new pencils, and whispered their thanks into the darkness. Their mother tucked them in gently, while their father stroked their hair softly, feeling gratitude that seemed too large for words. In every corner of the small house, warmth lingered, not just from the fire, but from the love that had entered their lives so quietly yet so powerfully. That Christmas evening became a story they would tell for years to come, not because of the food or the gifts, but because of the kindness of a stranger who had chosen to care, to spend his time and energy to create happiness where there had been only worry. Li Mei and Li Hua learned a lesson that would remain with them for life. Joy grows in the heart when it is shared, and even the smallest acts of love can change the world for someone who needs it most. As the twins finally drifted into sleep, their minds filled with dreams of wide fields, singing birds and laughter echoing in the air, they understood something profound. Happiness, true happiness, is not measured in riches, toys, or food alone. It is measured in moments of connection, in the gentle touch of care, and in the unwavering presence of love. And on that Christmas night, Li Mei and Li Hua had all of that and more. In the days that followed that unforgettable Christmas, Li Mei and Li Hua awoke with a lightness in their hearts that they had never felt before. The memory of Mr. Chen's visit, the warmth of the food, and the joy of receiving gifts still lingered like a gentle glow. Every time they thought about it, their faces lit up with smiles. It was as if the kindness they had experienced had filled the empty spaces that had weighed on them for months. Even the small house felt different. The walls no longer seemed bare, and the cold corners seemed warmer somehow. The twins' mother noticed the change immediately. Her daughters were lighter in step, brighter in spirit, and even more eager to help around the house. Li Mei began to draw pictures every morning, filling their small home with colorful images of flowers, animals, and the little joys they had experienced during the Christmas meal. Li Hua wrote short stories about adventures, about giving, and about the magic that kindness can bring. Each story, each picture, carried a piece of the hope they had received from Mr. Chen, a reminder that even small actions can leave a lasting impact. Their father, too, felt the transformation in the family. Though he still faced challenges with his injury and the difficulty of work, he smiled more easily, laughed more freely, and found comfort in seeing his daughters happy. The twins would often share their drawings and stories with him, explaining how each one represented a moment of joy, love, or generosity. He would nod quietly, sometimes chuckling, sometimes tearing up, but always proud of the wisdom and sensitivity that his daughters were developing. At school, Li Mei and Li Hua began to share the story of their Christmas with their friends. They spoke of the kind rancher who had come to their home, the warmth of the meal, and the small gifts that had meant so much. Their classmates listened, fascinated, and some of them were inspired to help in small ways themselves. A boy from their class brought extra rice from home to share with another child who had little, while a girl offered to help clean the schoolyard for everyone to enjoy. The twins realized that joy could spread like sunlight, reaching even places they had never imagined, and that kindness was contagious when it came from the heart. The village, too, seemed subtly changed. Neighbors who had heard about Mr. Chen's generosity began to take small actions of their own. Some left vegetables on doors, Others offered small toys to children in need, and many shared a word of encouragement with families struggling to get by. Li Mei and Li Hua were amazed to see how one act of love could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond what they had thought possible. The twins began to understand a truth that had been difficult to grasp before, that even the smallest gesture of care has the power to transform a community. At home, the twins continued to treasure the gifts they had received. Li Mei's colored pencils became tools for storytelling and expression, while Li Hua's dolls inspired countless imaginary adventures that they played together. They began to involve their parents in these games, creating little performances that brought laughter and joy into the house. These small moments, simple as they were, became treasured rituals. Every time they drew or played, they were reminded of that special Christmas, of Mr. Chen's generosity, and of the warmth that comes from caring for others. Over time, the twins began to think of ways to give back. They gathered small gifts from home, old toys, extra school supplies, and drawings they had created, and delivered them to children in the village who had little. They invited friends to join them in small acts of kindness, such as helping elderly neighbors carry water or tidying up shared spaces. Each act, no matter how tiny, filled them with a sense of pride and happiness, a feeling that they could touch lives and make the world brighter for someone else. Li Mei and Li Hua realized that the lesson of Christmas was not about what they received, but about how they could share what they had with others. As the seasons changed, the twins carried the memory of that Christmas through every part of their lives. When spring arrived and the fields bloomed, they ran through the grass, laughing and playing, imagining adventures inspired by the dolls and drawings they had received. In summer, they helped their mother in the garden, learning patience and care, always remembering how small acts can make a difference. Autumn brought long walks through the village, during which they shared stories of generosity with younger children, planting seeds of kindness that they hoped would grow over the years. Winter returned again, and with it, the memory of that first Christmas dinner filled with love, warmth, and unexpected joy. Years later, Li Mei and Li Hua would retell the story of that Christmas to their own children. They spoke of the rancher who had come into their lives when they needed hope the most, who had brought not only food and gifts, but also love and encouragement. They described how a simple act of kindness could transform an ordinary day into a lifelong memory, and how generosity, when shared sincerely, could create ripples of joy that extend far beyond the original gesture. Their children listened wide-eyed, captivated by the story of hope and compassion, understanding that the lessons of love and kindness were timeless. The twins' family never forgot Mr. Chen either. They often spoke of him with deep gratitude, recounting his warmth, patience, and generosity. They imagined the long journey he must have made from his ranch to their village, and the care he must have taken to bring happiness into their home. In their hearts, he became a symbol of the power of giving and the importance of thinking of others, even strangers, in times of need. The twins hoped, one day, to meet him again, not just to thank him, but to share the joy and hope that he had inspired in them with the next generation of children. Life continued with its challenges, as it always does, but the twins faced each day with a resilience and optimism that came from knowing the power of love and generosity. When hardships appeared, they remembered that Christmas, the warmth of the food, the laughter around the table, and the kindness of a stranger who cared enough to act. That memory gave them courage, reminding them that even in difficult times, good people and small acts of love could create light in the darkness. Li Mei and Li Hua grew up with hearts full of compassion, learning to help those around them and to appreciate the simple joys of life. They continued to give back to their village, inspired by the lesson that generosity is never wasted, and that one act of love can create countless others. They carried the spirit of that Christmas into adulthood, shaping the people they became and teaching others through example. Every kind word, every shared meal, Every small gesture of care was a continuation of the magic that had touched them years ago. In the quiet moments of reflection, the twins often thought about the profound lesson they had learned, that love and kindness are the greatest gifts one can give. The generosity of Mr. Chen had not only filled their stomachs for one evening, but had also nourished their hearts and minds for a lifetime. It showed them that true joy comes from connection, compassion, and the courage to reach out to others in need. That simple act of giving had transformed not just one Christmas, but their entire lives, leaving a legacy of hope and gratitude that would never fade. And so, as Li Mei and Li Hua looked toward the future, they knew that the magic of that Christmas would always guide them. It reminded them to be kind, to care, and to act with love, even when life seemed uncertain or difficult. They understood that every act of generosity, no matter how small, could ripple outward, touching lives in ways that could never be measured. The twins had learned that hope is not just a feeling but a choice, to act, to give, and to believe in the goodness of people. From that Christmas forward, Li Mei and Li Hua carried the spirit of giving into everything they did. They remembered the feeling of joy at the table, the laughter shared with a stranger who became a friend, and the warmth that a simple act of kindness could bring. The memory stayed with them forever, guiding their choices, inspiring their dreams, and reminding them that in every heart, there is the power to bring joy to others. In the end, that one Christmas, when a kind rancher arrived with baskets of food and gifts, became more than a story of generosity. It became a story of transformation. For Li Mei and Li Hua, it was a story of love, hope, and the remarkable difference one person can make in the lives of others. It taught them that even in the hardest times, there is always room for joy, that every act of kindness matters, and that love, when shared, never truly ends.